Hi all, I have another very interesting game to show you from the Your Next Move Rapid Tournament. This is in round 4. So Wesley was playing Anish Giri. Let's have a look. C4, the English opening, knight f6, g3, e5, bishop g2, d5. So it's like a reverse Sicilian defence in a way. C takes, knight takes d5, knight c3, knight b6. White enjoys that semi-open c file, and often c5 will be targeted later as an outpost square. Knight f3, knight c6, d3, putting the brakes on e4 and opening up the bishop. Bishop e7, both sides castle. Bishop e3, you can see that that square c5 is subject to attention now immediately. Bishop e6, rook c1, and quite often a plan does involve knight e4 to c5. Knight d5. White actually now just takes on d5 though to get rid of that centralized knight. Bishop takes d5. Queen c2. Now this is quite interesting, and at first I wasn't even going to mention this pawn grab because it looks as though this should be easily punishable, but actually let's have a look at the pawn grab possibility. This wasn't played in the game. We see rook e8. I just want to quickly show you some fireworks here that could result. b3, it seems as though the bishop's trapped. Knight b4, queen b2, and you would think rook a1 and that's the end of the bishop. Let's take this a bit further. a5, trying to rescue the bishop. Rook a1, and now black has bishop f6 with the queen on b2 for e4, so things get a little bit complicated. Rook takes a2, there's e4, and that's not nice. So what white would have to do here, I don't know how much, even if the players calculated this much, because it was a rapid game. Knight d2, say e4, d4, this is going to be good for white. So fundamentally it is about the bishop being trapped, but now taking here, hitting the knight, white ends up with a good position there, but it might actually be better to instead of rook takes a2 to play, no sorry, pardon me, in this position instead of queen takes a2 here, to play knight takes e4, because queen takes a2, there's c takes d, and that'll be even, believe it or not. So white, has to be really careful in these variations, even what looks like a silly move, but this is the way to get a big advantage technically. This kind of thing, winning lots of pawns. The centre is going to start going forward as opposed to a pawn. So it was a slightly, not even something I was going to mention because it just seems absurd to allow b3, but yeah, black has resources like knight b4 and bishop f6. So if you're in this similar situation, it's maybe important to know some of the concrete stuff here. So anyway, rook e8 was played, and now a3, moving the pawn away from the bishop. a6, rook fd1, bishop f6, now knight d2. Here, by the way, it looks as though if h3, knight d4 could be quite okay for black, because black sometimes wants to do this to change pawn structure, and the rook's gazing at e2 now, and black actually will be slightly better, it seems, here technically. So white is kind of, by playing knight d4, this is very interesting. Now bishop takes g2, king takes. Bishop g5 was played. And you might think, well, what if black did something else here? h6, knight e4. This actually should be a small advantage for white. Black trading the dark square bishops is kind of interesting before knight e4 happens. So bishop takes, queen takes, e3. White still is left with that kind of pressure on the semi-open file here. Black has that semi-open file, and you think there's a battle here. Which semi-open file is more important? Okay, we have queen e7, knight e4. That c5 square is a bit of a torture square again, and you can see that it's only the pawn on b7 which is holding up the knight here. There's no fellow pawn on d7, so this knight stability is in question. Rook ac8, knight c5 is played. So now, yeah, there's knight takes b7 on the cards. or even potentially knight takes a6. Knight d8 is played, protecting b7. Now we have d4. And this looks like a really classic kind of position. Things have simplified. Has white actually got anything? We have now e4, d5, and now black, Anish Giri plays f5 in this position. And there's a really cool tactical resource available for white, a really cool tactical shot that's played here. I wonder if you can guess it. If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video here, what would you play with white in this position? Okay, knight takes a6, believe it or not. Sacrificing a knight. The idea, this wasn't taken actually, knight f7 was played in the game, but if black took, can you see? We can exploit the pin which has resulted from this semi-open c-file pressure with d6. And say after queen, if the queen moves away from d7, we fork both rooks. That's pretty nasty. If the queen goes to d7, d takes, hitting the queen. Queen moves, c takes. White is getting to be material advantage here. There's a material advantage here for white, which is quite good. White's in a good position there. So it's a nice little combination, this. Knight takes a6. So knight f7 was played. d6 anyway now. So we have here the possibility if black plays c takes, then I believe queen takes is very strong. That would be very, very horrible to lose both rooks just for the queen there. I think this is fine for white. So we have actually knight takes d6. Knight takes c7. Rook d8. Check. Queen f7. Knight e6. A couple of rooks come off. Rook e8. Knight d4, protecting the queen elegantly. Queen takes, knight takes. So white is still better here. Pawn up. King f7, knight d4. The knight's actually a bit better than its counterpart. g6. Rook c3. King f6. Rook b3. So this introduces the possibility of rook b6 as well. a4. King e5. a5. King d5. Rook b6. Rook f7. b3. Keeping the knight out of c4. g5. a6 now. White is keen to dissolve here because it actually opens up the possibilities of rook a5 check now to rest the black king. Knight b7 is played. If, for example, f4, rook a5 check, and the king has got nowhere to go, the knight's controlling the escape squares. So it would actually be winning a whole knight there. So knight b7 covers the a5 check. Rook b6, knight d6. Rook a6 again, with the idea again of rook a5 check. Now white switches to avoid repetition. Rook h6, knight d6. Rook h5, putting pressure on this side of the board. This rook is a real nuisance to black, torturing pawns now. Over here, rook h6 with the threat of rook takes d6 check and knight takes f5 check. Rook f7. So just to put that on the board, by the way, yeah, if f4, rook takes d6 is a nice fork here. So rook f7, rook h5. Rook g7, h4, breaking up black's pawns a bit more. G takes, rook takes. You can see they're more fixed now. King e5, rook h6. Again with the idea of rook takes d6 and knight f5 check. Knight takes f5 check. Rook h5 again. Check. And now king h3. White is preparing something here now. And after rook h5, there's that pawn is now pinned, so g4 is on the cards now. Unpinning with king f6, because if rook c7 this pin's too much, be losing more material after g4, be very unpleasant. So unpinning, check, king h4, knight b5. We have knight e2, rook e7, g4, knight d6, if f takes, that's another way of losing that pawn knight with rook h5 check, winning that knight over there. So we have knight d6, knight d4, and the game ended here. There's a considerable pressure being exerted on black. Let's give an example. Rook e8, g5 is good here. For example, if rook e7, knight c6 check. So what does actually black do here? If rook c8, rook takes h7. Yeah, it's horrible. This position is kind of zugzwangy. And let's have a look at another possibility. Rook f7, rook h5, rook g7. We can snap that f5 pawn off. And here, this is just very nice for white. It's going to be winning. So I thought that was quite a neat positional game in the English Opening, showing some of the real practical dangers of this c-file later. A really nice tactic to win a pawn. White's was an extra pawn up and a more solid pawn structure generally, and then was really probing with his rook both on the queen side, not minding dissolving one of his own pawns to get that rook activated, and swinging across to talk to these other pawns, fixing down black's pawns on the king's side, then preparing g4 to further weaken black's pawns and put even more pressure on black's structure. So a very, very nice positional game by Wesley So, which is phenomenal given it was just a rapid game as well. A bit of a positional masterpiece for a rapid game. So excellent tournament for Wesley So. Hope you enjoyed this. Comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks very much.